In this video, we'll discuss how to convert between units of measure. Now, here are a list of measurements that you need to know and that are very helpful when we're trying to do these conversions. We should know different changes in length, capacity, weight, as well as how to convert between standard and metric units. For example, one of the most useful ones you'll find is that 1 inches is equal to 2 and 5,400 centimeters. 1 gallon is actually equal to 3 and 7,900 liters, and 1 kilogram is equal to 2 and 2/10 pounds. But take time, look at these, review them, and make sure you have them with you so you understand where are those relationships we can use to make conversions. Now, it is helpful to also recognize how to ballpark or estimate some of those values so that if we don't need an exact number, we can say we're pretty close and we're okay with that. Some common ones is the recognition that 2 inches is about 5 centimeters, a liter is about a quart, a meter is about a yard, a kilogram is about 2 pounds, and 1 kilometer is about 6/10 of a mile. So if you think about, like, if you hear a lot about 5-kilometer races, that's a very standard race for cross-country running. That's about 3 miles, and it's actually a little more than 3 miles, but it's close to it. And if you had to go to another country like Canada and you pay per liter, say if you paid $1.25 per liter, you would know that would be about $5 for a gallon of gas, since a liter is about a quart. Now, if we want to do more formalized conversions, we have 2 methods we can use. We can either use proportional relationships or we can use chain of movement. Let's look at the proportional relationship to start. When we do this, we're going to construct a proportion one at a time based on a next direct relationship to what we are given. We solve that proportion and then use that to help us move to the next one until we have the desired unit. And remember that our units should always align as we set up the proportion. For example, say we want to convert 20 inches to miles. So we can't go directly inches to miles. We're going to need to go from inches to feet and then feet to miles. That's going to require us to do 2 proportions. We know that there are 12 inches in 1 foot. So if we use that as one side of our proportion, we set up the other side to match with the information we have. So 12 inches to 1 foot is equal to 20 inches over x. So we line our inches and we're going to align our feet. Now we cross multiply to solve our proportion. This will give us 12 inches times x equals 20 inches times 1 foot. If these were actual numbers, like whole numbers beyond just 1, we would do 20 times whatever that is. But 20 times 1 will give us 1. Next, we divide both sides by the 12 inches. And you see, I am leaving the units on purpose so that we can see what is happening. When I simplify, inches divided by inches simplifies to 1, leaving me just with feet. And if I simplify 20 over 12, this will become 5/3 feet. And I'm trying to keep that answer as exact as possible. And our calculator can help us continue to carry fractions or an answer from one line to the next. So keep the answer as accurate as possible as you go until you're down to the very last step where you may need to round. So next, I have feet and I need to go to miles. So I have a relationship of 5,280 feet to 1 mile. So that will be one side of my proportion, and I set up the other side with feet to miles as well. So I had 5/3 of a foot, or 5/3 feet, to my unknown amount. So again, I cross multiply, and this is going to give me the 5,280 feet times x equals 5/3 feet times 1 mile. I'm going to divide both sides by that 5,280, and then I see feet divided by feet simplify to 1, leave me just with miles, which is exactly the unit I want. So always write the units as you do this. That will leave me with 3,168th of a mile, which is approximately 0.0003157, and really goes on forever beyond that because it's a repeating decimal, but it's approximately that value. So we can say that 20 inches is equal to 3,168th of a mile. Now, we could also use what's called the chain of movement. Instead of using proportions, we're going to set up a series of fractions that will allow us to simplify the units. The part that's important is that we're trying to quote unquote cancel, but we're simplifying out the units so that the previous unit is simplified out and all we're going to be left with is our desired unit in the numerator. But we write that chain of movement to help us set up the fractions and know how we convert. Let's go back to the example we just had, which is the 20 inches to miles. So we have in the chain of movement inches to feet to miles. It's the same thing we were thinking about the proportional relationships, but we're going to do it in one single expression. So we start with what do we know? We know we have 20 inches and we put that over 1. If this was 3/4 of an inch, we would do 3 over 4 and our unit would still be inches in the numerator. Now we want to make sure that the inches simplifies to 1, leaving us with feet in the numerator. So we know we have the relationship of 1 foot to 12 inches. It's a matter of paying attention. Does it go in the numerator or denominator? And the feet should be in the numerator so that when I look, inches divided by inches will simplify out and leave me only with feet in the numerator. That's the key, in the numerator. Now I'm going from feet to miles. Miles is what I want, so that should be in the numerator. So that's 1 mile to 5,280 feet. And this allows the feet to simplify to 1, leaving me only with a single unit of miles. Now I can multiply my numerators, 20 times 1 times 1, and that's mile in the numerator, and then my denominators, 1 times 12 times 5,280, which is just 12 times 5,280. That will simplify to 20 over 63,360 of a mile, which, when simplified again, goes to that 1 3,168th of a mile. And so again, 20 inches is 1 of 3,168th of a mile. Let's look at just a few more examples. Say I want to convert 6 gallons to ounces. Now, I'm going to use the proportional relationships for this example. So if I am going to do this, I need to first look at my relationships. How am I going to go from gallons to ounces? So I can go back to that sheet of all the conversions. I know I can go from 1 gallon to 4 quarts, and then I can go from 1 quart to 32 ounces. And if I could go some other units, I could go from quart to pints to cups to ounces, or I can recognize this single conversion right here and do it in just 2 steps. Do what makes the most sense to you as you're doing your conversions. But let's start here with our ratio of 1 gallon to 4 quarts and set up the proportional relationship. So I have 1 gallon to 4 quarts equals 6 gallons to my unknown number of quarts. See, again, gallons are in my numerator in both of those cases. I cross multiply. This gives me 1 gallon times x equals 6 gallons times 4 quarts. So I'm going to divide both sides by gallons, by that 1 gallon, which allows the gallons to simplify to 1. And I can do 6 times 4 will give me 24 quarts. And 24 divided by 1 is just 24. So now I have it in quarts. I'm going to convert quarts to ounces. So I have 1 quart to 32 ounces equals 24 quarts to my unknown. And again, quarts to quarts, they're both in the numerator. I cross multiply. This will give me 1 quart times x equals 24 quarts times 32 ounces. I divide both sides by that 1 quart so that I can simplify my units. And again, I'm carrying the units and making sure I'm paying attention every single time. So now 24 times 32 will give me 768 ounces. That means that 6 gallons is 768 ounces. Let's look at one last conversion. So you want to convert a meter to yards. Now the key here is that we're changing from metric to standard. So we have to go and look at those units about how do we go from a metric system to a standard. And the relationship we use is that 24 centimeters equals 1 inch. So we're going to start in meters and end up in yards, and we're going to have to go through centimeters to inches to feet to yards. So let's look at this through a chain of movement. We start at meters. That can be converted to centimeters. Centimeters, using this standard conversion, can go to inches, which can then go to feet and then to yards. So we're going to start with what we know. We know we have 1 meter. So we're going to do 1 meter over 1. Meter to centimeters, we want the meters to simplify out, leaving us only with centimeters, so centimeters will be in the numerator. There are 100 centimeters in 1 meter. The nice thing here, meters to meters simplifies, leaving us only centimeters. Now I'll look at my inches, and here is my relationship. I want inches in the numerator because that's my new chain of movement. So it's 1 inches over 2 and 5400 centimeters. So that centimeters divided by centimeters simplifies to 1, leaving me only inches. Now I want feet. So feet will be in my numerator this time. That's 1 foot for 12 inches. Inches divided by inches simplifies. And lastly, yards, 1 yard to 3 feet, so that my feet simplify. And now I can put this all together. I have 1 times 100 times 1 times 1 times the 1 yard. It's the only unit left. And I want to put it there so I know unit in the numerator is what I want. Denominator, 1 times 2 and 5400 times 12 times 3. I simplify this, and it comes out at approximately 1 900 yards. So 1 meter is about 1 900 yards. So a meter is a little longer than a yard, even though that's a common ballpark estimate that we use a lot of times.